My name is Abraham Duarte, and I'm a mechanical engineer, and today I'll be presenting over the Code of Ethics. So a quick overview about what I'll be presenting today. It involves explaining who the NSPE is, what the Code of Ethics is, and I'll provide some examples of a particular code I chose. So who is the NSPE? So the NSPE stands for the National Society of Professional Engineers, and here are a few of their important things they advocate for. Firstly, they like to represent professional and licensed engineers. One of the ways they do this is by promoting like a positive view from the public. They want the public to have a trust towards the engineering profession. Moreover, the society also protects from unqualified practitioners, and so let's say like somebody who's not licensed to be an engineer shouldn't be performing any engineering work. And finally, they like to advocate for adequate compensation for engineers and promote ethical behavior by engineers. So what is the Code of Ethics? So in a nutshell, the Code of Ethics is a set of guidelines and rules that all engineers are to follow, and engineering students should become familiar with. So the particular code I chose is under Section 2, Rules of Practice, and it's code number 1, which states that engineers shall hold paramount the health, safety, and welfare of the public. And it includes 6 subsections, A through F, and I'll be discussing each of those next. So for my first example, I'll be discussing the Challenger 7 space shuttle disaster, which occurred in the year 1986, and it has been one of the worst disasters in U.S. history. So for this code, I chose to discuss subcodes 21A and 21F. The first one, it states that if you're an engineer, right, and if you're working on a project such as something important like a space shuttle or whatever it may be, like you may be designing a house, a building, a car, a machine, if at any point you feel that somebody's life or property is in danger, it's your responsibility to notify the employer. And code 21F is pretty similar in that it states that if any part of this code is violated, you need to notify the proper authorities and cooperate with them. So for this example, one notable fact about the Challenger 7 accident was that a group of engineers working on the project were concerned about launching due to the weather, and so they encouraged and wanted management to postpone the launch for a more suitable day, as they predicted something bad like what happened, right? And so while they did do their job and notify their employer, unfortunately management decided to prioritize deadlines over the safety of the crew, and yeah, I mean, unfortunately 7 lives were lost that day, and it kind of goes to show that engineers should be trusted since they are the professionals, and they always care about the safety of people, right? So my next example is a more recent one. It concerns the company of Google and the company of Uber. And for this example, I'll be discussing codes 21C and 21D. So the first one, it's pretty obvious, and it states that engineers shouldn't steal any data or information from their employer. And 21D states that, let's say, if you're working for a company and you feel that they're engaged in illegal behavior or dishonest enterprise, that you should not associate your name with them. So both of these kind of tie to this example where Anthony, who was a lead engineer for Google, was actually an incredibly bright engineer as he worked in the company of Google. And he was a pioneer for their autonomous driving program, and he was such a good engineer that the company compensated him over $100 million. And again, since he was so good, like all these other companies wanted him to go work for them instead, and he ended up quitting his job at Google and going to work at Uber. And with him, he took a USB that included over 17,000 files that were obviously property of Google, and he used those files to lay the foundation for Uber's own program. And obviously, he got caught, and he ended up getting sued for $170 million and going to prison. So obviously, if you find yourself in a position such as this, don't do the right thing, and obviously don't steal from your employer, right? And finally, I'll quickly touch on this last two codes, 21B and 21E. The first one states that they're pretty self-explanatory. The first one states that if you shouldn't approve any document that's not up to standard, and the last one states that an engineer shouldn't aid on the unlawful practice of engineering by a person or firm. So for this, I just chose a pretty popular example, which is the Hyatt Regency Hotel collapse, where I believe there was an engineer who was working on the project, and I think it was a contractor who made an alteration on the design, which ended up doubling the load on one of the supporting nuts. And the engineer failed to realize this change, and he approved the document, he sealed it, and it ended up leading to the collapse and failure of the bridge, resulting in, I believe, over 100 deaths. So obviously, like, the engineer approved something that was not right, it was wrong. And so this last point just kind of emphasizes that, in that whenever you approve an engineering document, you seal it. You don't want to seal somebody's work who is not certified to do that work, right? Because, like, their wrong work may end up coming back to you, and you're supposed to be trusted to approve, like, things that are up to standard, of course, right? So yeah, that's the end of my presentation, and here's a list of my references, and thank you for watching.